Okay, welcome everyone to The Deep Dive. Today we are taking a really close look at a company that's, well, definitely been making waves in healthcare. Eli Lilly and Company, symbol LLY. So I've got this stack of information here. It's pretty comprehensive. Detailed financials, recent earnings call stuff, news headlines, analyst views, you name it. And our mission today really is to sift through all of this, pull out the most important pieces, and figure out what the data is actually telling us about LLY right now. Eli Lilly is, a huge player, and you've probably seen the buzz around their recent performance. So let's dive in and see what these sources actually reveal.
Yeah, and what's great about having all these different sources is you get, a more rounded picture. You see the numbers, sure, but also the company's own take from their calls, plus how the market's digesting it all. So just pulling a quick snapshot from the report. LLY, trading on the New York Stock Exchange, the data we have shows a last close of $765.84. That gives them a market cap of, wow, $725.81 billion.
Huge number.
Massive. And the enterprise value is right up there too, $761.24 billion. And the data also flagged a pretty significant recent one-day jump up over $15, or about 2%.
Right.
And they're solidly in healthcare, specifically drug manufacturers.
Right.
And the summary basically paints the picture you'd expect. Finding, developing, selling human drugs globally. Pretty diverse portfolio: diabetes, oncology, immunology, neuroscience. But, while they have a lot of familiar names in there, the sources are really clear. The current growth story, it's overwhelmingly about Mounjaro and Zepbound. Those are the big ones driving things right now.
Okay, so let's unpack those stars then and dig into the latest numbers. That Q1 2025 earnings review seems like the place to start. It really jumps out.
Yeah, this is where things get really, really interesting. Q1 25 was just incredibly strong. The report shows revenue shot up 45% compared to Q1 last year.
45%, wow.
Exactly, heading $12.73 billion. And like you said, the main reason for that huge jump, volume growth, just selling a lot more of their key products. Specifically, Mounjaro and Zepbound were the powerhouses combined. They brought in $7.5 billion in revenue just in Q1.
$7.5 billion from just two drugs.
In one quarter, yeah. Looking closer, Mounjaro sales, they more than doubled year over year to $3.84 billion. And Zepbound, the newer one, $2.31 billion in sales. It just shows how fast they're being adopted, not just for diabetes, but obesity, too.
Right, the obesity market is huge.
Absolutely. Now, the sources do mention, it wasn't all universally up. Verzenio, their oncology drug, grew 10% globally, which is good. But the U.S. picture was a bit muddied. Things like wholesaler buying patterns, competition. Though they did offset some of that with price increases and good international volume.
Okay.
And we also saw mentions of some positive regulatory news. Omvo got approved for Crohn's disease in a few places. Jaypirca got an EU nod for CLL, which is a type of leukemia. So progress elsewhere, too.
And what about profitability? Did that huge volume help margins?
It did, yeah. Gross margin ticked up a point to 83.5%. The report says that was helped by production costs and selling more of those high-value drugs. But interestingly, it also notes that this was partly offset by slightly lower realized prices, so the net price they got was down a bit.
Okay, so incredible current performance, especially from those two blockbusters. But with pharma, it's always about what's next, right? The pipeline. What are the sources saying there?
Absolutely critical, and they're clearly investing heavily. R&D spending was up 8% in Q1, the report shows.
Yeah.
And one name that keeps popping up in the material is orforglipron. This is their experimental oral GLP-1 candidate. So think Mounjaro or Zepbound, which work on those appetite and blood sugar hormones. But this one's a pill, not an injection.
An oral GLP-1, that sounds significant.
Potentially huge. The source highlights positive phase 3 data, the Achieve-1 trial for type 2 diabetes. It apparently met its goals, showed efficacy, similar to the injectables. A1C reductions were like 1.3% to 1.6%. And pretty decent weight loss, too, around 16 pounds at the top dose.
And safety. That's always the question with new drugs.
Yeah, described as favorable. Mostly the expected GI stuff, nausea, vomiting consistent with the class, but importantly, low discontinuation rates in the trial. People generally stuck with it.
So what's Lilly's angle here? Why is the oral version so important strategically?
Well, they see a substantial opportunity, is how the source frames it. It's pretty straightforward. A pill is just more convenient for a lot of people, right? It gets around needle phobia, could potentially open up the market globally, maybe even become a first-line option earlier in treatment.
Makes sense. What are the timelines looking like?
The source suggests they might file for obesity approval by the end of 2025 and then type 2 diabetes in the first half of 26. Plus, they mentioned more data coming in the next year from other orforglipron trials, so lots more news flow expected there.
And it's not just orforglipron, is it? The pipeline seems deeper.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's retatrutide, that's the so-called triple agonist, starting a new phase 3 for obesity and chronic low back pain, which is interesting. Then there's muvalaplin, an oral drug targeting LPA cholesterol for heart disease phase 3 starting later this year. Olomorasib in lung cancer, also starting phase 3. 5 completely new drugs entering phase 1.
Wow, they're busy.
Very busy. And even acquisitions like Site 1, adding a non-opioid pain candidate that's ready for phase 2. They're really broadening out.
Okay, so a packed pipeline. Now, beyond the drugs themselves, the report also mentioned some major strategic moves. What stood out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties right back to that Mounjaro and Zepbound demand. Manufacturing capacity is a huge focus. The source highlights just massive investments, over $50 billion committed to new U.S. facilities since 2012.
$50 billion.
Yeah, $50 billion. It includes plans for 4 new sites, 3 of them focused on making the API the actual active ingredient.
Why such a colossal investment?
Well, simply put, they have to. They need to meet this incredible global demand, especially for Mounjaro and Zepbound. But it's also strategic, building supply chain resilience. The goal, they stated, is eventually supplying the entire U.S. market for these drugs from plants inside the U.S.
That's a big goal. Any other initiatives?
Yeah, they mentioned things like Lilly Direct, that platform to make it easier for patients to get their meds. The report actually noted over $200 million in Q1 revenue came from self-pay, partly through that channel.
Interesting.
And some collaborations mentioned in the news section too, working with WellDoc on digital health tools, and a deal with Comuris for technology that could lead to long-acting injectable versions of their incretins. So thinking about delivery and patient support too.
Okay, so massive growth, deep pipeline, huge investments. Sounds almost too good to be true. What are the challenges? What risks do these sources point out?
Right, yeah, it's definitely not all clear sailing. The reports are pretty upfront about the headwinds.
Like what?
Well, pricing pressure is one. Remember that slight dip in realized prices. The source noted a 7% net price decline in the US and Europe combined in Q1, impacting margins. That's something to watch.
A competition, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Intense. Especially from Novo Nordisk in the GLP-1 space. There's even news mentioned about Zepbound recently overtaking Novo's Wegovy in weekly U.S. prescriptions. And some chatter linking a CEO change at Novo Nordisk to that pressure.
Okay, so direct competition. What else?
PBM dynamics. Pharmacy benefit managers. This came up as a key investor concern in the earnings Q&A.
Ah, the intermediaries who decide what drugs get covered.
Exactly. The source specifically mentioned a CVS Caremark decision affecting Zepbound access compared to Wegovy. Lilly's position, as stated, is they don't want these one-of-one exclusive deals that limit choice. They're focused on driving preference for Zepbound based on its merits, and maybe hoping orforglipron can change that dynamic later. They do think this particular issue only affects some insurance plans, though.
Still, access is key. Any other risks?
Yeah, the usual suspects. Regulatory and political risks. Potential for more drug pricing legislation beyond the IRA is always out there. Lilly's take, from the call, seems to be focusing on net prices after rebates, pushing for PBM reform, dealing with the 340B program. They also mentioned preferring international trade deals to address global pricing disparities.
Okay.
Oh, and tariffs. Current ones aren't a big deal for the 25 outlook, according to the source, but bigger, broader tariffs would hurt.
And you mentioned manufacturing investment, but is capacity still a constraint now?
It seems so. Despite pouring billions in, the source suggests meeting the current absolutely unprecedented demand is still a challenge. So near-term growth might actually be limited by how much they can physically produce and ship.
Right. A good problem to have, maybe, but still a constraint.
Exactly. And one more financial point, those acquired IP R&D charges. That's in-process R&D costs from acquisitions, like the Scorpiondale charge in Q1. It hit their reported GAAP EPS, though they usually adjust for that in their non-GAAP guidance. Just something to be aware of when looking at reported earnings.
Okay. And wasn't there something about a withdrawn application?
Yeah, tirzepatide, same drug as Mounjaro Zepbound, they pulled the U.S. application for a specific type of heart failure, HFpEF. The FDA apparently wanted another trial. Reviews are still ongoing elsewhere, and Lilly thinks doctors might get the benefit from the obesity data anyway, but still a slight setback there.
Wow. Okay. So that really covers the operations, the pipeline, the challenges. Let's zoom out. How does the market seem to be viewing the stock overall, based on the valuation and analyst views in this material.
Right. So the report gives us some valuation metrics. This particular source calculated a fair value of around $919.81 compared to the recent close near $765. That suggests, potential upside according to this source's model.
Okay. And the standard ratios, PE ratios.
Yeah. Listed TTM PE is high, 61.97. Forward PE is lower, 35.14, but still pretty demanding. Reflects those high growth expectations, obviously.
And what are the analysts saying? Are they all bullish?
Not entirely, no. There's definitely a range. The summary lists targets like UBS at $150, but then HSBC recently downgraded to reduce with a $700 target. Morgan Stanley's way up at $1,146. So quite a spread. The average target from the analysts listed in the source over the last 6 months was about $963.
So differing opinions out there.
For sure. And the report sums up the bull versus bear cases neatly. Bulls love the market position, the pipeline, especially orforglipron and those big manufacturing bets. Bears worry about the competition, the pricing pressure, the PBM access hurdles, and whether they can actually make enough product fast enough.
Makes sense.
And you see that reflected in the news headlines mentioned too, questions like, is LLY too cheap? Predictions of $1 trillion valuation, but also analysis of recent dips and whether they're buying opportunities. It really highlights the ongoing debate about the stock's value right now.
That was, a really thorough deep dive. It paints a picture of a company firing on, many cylinders with Mounjaro and Zepbound, but also investing massively for the future while navigating some pretty serious industry headwinds.
Exactly. You've got this incredible current success, this really exciting pipeline, especially the oral GLP-1, massive manufacturing scale-up. But then you have the pricing reality, the fierce competition, the PBM gatekeepers. It's a real tension there.
It really is. And it makes you think about that balancing act, doesn't it? How does a company like Lilly manage to deliver the strong near-term results the market wants, even with things like those IPR&D charges hitting reported earnings, while simultaneously sinking just tens of billions into building factories and R&D for growth that's years away?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it leads to something for you, the listener, to consider.
And if you found this deep dive valuable,
Please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell.
seriously, your support means everything. It lets us keep doing these deep dives, digging into the information that matters to you.
We really appreciate you tuning in. Hope you join us next time.